Hello, I'm Ray. Welcome to another podcast episode. This time, some response. I've had a lot of emails, especially, do you remember the episode about cheats never prosper? Especially about that one. Get straight into them. Juliet, it's a nice name. Juliet says, many decades ago, showing your age there, Juliet, she met a chap called Steve. They got on really well. She was 18, he was 20. They got on extremely well. Started going out together regularly. After 6 months, they even started talking about marriage. Juliet's friend, Carol, said to Juliet, I saw Steve out the other night. He was in a pub with some young girl. Juliet said, you must be mistaken. I've seen Steve just most nights. You must be mistaken. She said, it was last Thursday. Juliet thought back. Thursday, that's right, I didn't see Steve Thursday. Steve had gone out with a couple of his mates. Nothing wrong with that. Perfectly innocent. Juliet didn't say anything to Steve. She thought there's no point in stirring up problems. She didn't believe that he'd go off with someone else anyway, especially as they'd just started to talk about marriage and saving up and talking about the future. She saw no reason to mention it to Steve. I've got her email in front of me, so I'm just reading it as I go along. The next thing that happened was about a week went by, and this friend said to Juliet, I've seen Steve again with that same girl. Juliet trusted her friend and she trusted Steve. So she says that's the dilemma. But the seed of doubt had been planted. That was twice that this friend had said she'd seen Steve in a pub with another girl. Once the seed of doubt has been planted, it grows. Now her friend was nurturing this seed and helping it to grow, because about a week later, again, she said, he's still at it with that girl. By this time, Juliet was concerned. She hadn't confronted Steve because she says that she didn't want him to think that she didn't trust him. She says that she was now beginning to wonder. The seed of doubt was growing. She says that next that she did something terrible. She followed him. It was Thursdays that he usually saw his friends, just a couple of mates, and they went down to the local pub for a drink. Well, that's what he told her. So she followed him. He walked down to the pub. She'd parked her car around the corner somewhere, out of sight. She walked down to the pub, behind him, keeping a distance. When he went in there, she looked in through the window. He was at the bar with his two mates, the friends that she knew as well, and they were chatting, drinking, having a laugh. She stayed an hour. She says in her email, I know it's silly. I know you might think I'm stupid, but I stayed an hour. Oh, by the way, Juliet has given me permission to read this email out. That's why she sent it to me. I'm not breaking any confidence here. After an hour, she went home. That's it. There's no problems. Steve's with his mates. Her friend, a few days later, came out with the same line. I saw Steve with that girl again. That's 3 times. Juliet now realised that it was her friend that was lying, because Steve, on that night, had been in the pub, and unless he had, after the hour that she'd been watching him, unless he then met some girl in the very same pub where his 2 friends were, then this whole story had been fabricated. But why? That's what she couldn't understand. Why would her friend do such a thing? Juliet distanced herself from her friend once she realised that these stories were all made up, obviously to cause trouble. But that little seed of doubt was still there, and Juliet found herself on Thursday evenings going down to the pub and looking through the window. She hated doing it, but she was becoming obsessed, as she put it, with checking up on Steve. So what they had was not ruined, but, as she put it, tainted. And she hated the whole thing. She tried not to go on a Thursday night down to the pub. She wanted to confront him, but she daren't. She didn't want him to think that she had suspicions. She decided to go to the pub one last time, then that would be it. She wouldn't spy on him any more. She was late. There was a problem with her mother wanting a lift somewhere. She was late to the pub. She didn't get there till 9. Normally got there at 7, stayed till about 8. She looked through the window at 9, and there was her friend with Steve at the bar and these 2 friends of his. She was close to him, up against him, laughing, and Juliet was stunned. She said she just stood there frozen, looking through the window, couldn't believe it. her friend was with Steve. But if that was the case, why had she told Juliet? Why had she said Steve meets this girl in the pub every Thursday night if it was Juliet's best friend? It didn't make sense. This could obviously end in one of two ways. Either they split up and that was the end of it, or somehow it was all innocent and Juliet and Steve stayed together. What happened was Steve came to Juliet one evening when he should have been at the pub, and he came round to her house. And he said, she said, "Why aren't you at the pub?" He said, "I'm not going there anymore." She said, "Why? Well, what's happened?" Now, bear in mind, she hadn't said anything to him. He said, "Your friend Carol turns up every week and pesters me. She's all over me, wanting me to buy her a drink, which I've done a couple of times because it's your friend. She's all over me, trying to kiss me, asking me to take her out, trying to arrange to meet me, really coming on strong. I didn't want to say anything because she's your friend, but I've had enough of it, so I'm just not going there anymore." Juliet finishes by saying that obviously immense relief, but she still didn't know why. Why would Carol have done all this? Why try to cause all this trouble? Finally, she confronted her friend, told her everything, said that she had seen her in the pub with Steve. Steve had explained the whole thing. It transpired that Carol was extremely jealous, not so much that she wanted Steve, but she wanted to split them up because Juliet was happy. She said, "I've never seen you so happy," and it annoyed her. She couldn't find a boyfriend. She couldn't find anyone to love and to be happy with. So she didn't want Juliet to have anyone. That's what it was all about. Obviously the friendship then ended there and then, and Juliet says that she went on, married Steve. They've now got 3 kids. In fact, they've got, she says, 2 grandchildren. So all's well that ends well. But what a dreadful thing. Just shows you, doesn't it? Little seed of doubt planted, what damage that could have done had Steve not been an honest, genuine guy. Now this one, if it could be, this next one is worse. This is from Carla. Hello, Carla. Carla at school was bullied by this boy. He wasn't very nice. He was a little bit older than her, and he used to bully her, call her all sorts of names. And one day he started spreading a rumour. Carla's mum is a prostitute. She's on the game. Now, Carla couldn't believe this. I mean, obviously it wasn't true. She couldn't believe it. Her friends were asking her, "Is that true, Carla? Is your mum on the game? Is that right? How much does she earn?" Carla eventually told her mother what had been going on. And her mother then said, "That explains a lot. People in the neighbourhood that usually say hi, hello, good morning, they look the other way." She said, obviously, word has got round. Now, all because of this silly boy at school, obviously having some sort of stupid joke and a laugh, so he thought. All that had started is this seed of doubt again, isn't it? All that started this massive problem for Carla and her family. But it went on and on. Word got round more and more. The neighbours starting ignoring Carla's mother and Carla and her dad and her brother. They started shunning the whole family. Carla came downstairs one evening. Her mother had popped up to the local shop to get some milk. She'd come in the front door and was crying. Carla heard this and she rushed downstairs. "What's the matter, Mum? Why are you crying?" Apparently a chap in a car, as she was walking back from the shop, pulled up beside her and said, "How much do you charge, love?" Carla's mother just broke down in tears. She was now having people curb crawling her. They moved house. They just moved away. Carla had left school anyway. She was at leaving age, so she left school anyway, and they moved away from the area, and that was it. Her mother was psychologically damaged by this, but fortunately she managed to get over it. Carla ends by saying how devastating the whole situation was, all because of some silly boy with a daft joke at school. But again, that just shows how one little seed of doubt planted can grow and grow. As they say, throw enough mud and some of it will stick. Have I got time for another one? Where are we? Oh, we're only 10 minutes into the episode. Yes, I've got time for another one. This email is from Brian. Brian says, as he put it, yonks ago, yonks, he met Tracy, lovely girl. They were going out together. Been going out for several months. when someone, he said he didn't know who at the time, someone started putting this rumour about that he was having an affair with Tracy's mother. He says that Tracy's mother was pretty young, not unattractive, but it was his girlfriend's mother. He wouldn't have had an affair with her anyway, let alone as it's his girlfriend's mum. And he just couldn't believe it. But of course, one or two people started believing it. One or two of his friends were saying, what do you get up to? Do you sneak round there when Tracy's dad is out? And all this sort of thing started going on. And it was getting worse and worse. Brian obviously didn't want Tracy to find out about these rumours. And he didn't want her mum to hear what was being said behind her back. And worse still, if her dad found out, he might confront Brian, who was totally innocent. He might have a go at Brian. It was very worrying, Brian says. He just didn't know who had started it or why. Why would anyone say that sort of thing? He hadn't fallen out with anyone. He hadn't upset anyone as far as he knew. So why would anyone do that? The rumours carried on circulating as they do. At this stage, there was no seed of doubt been planted anywhere. No one knew about it apart from Brian. But he decided that it was only a matter of time and word would get back to Tracy and both her parents. So he told Tracy, he said, look, this is what's going around. It's not true. I don't know who started it. Now, Tracy wasn't at all amused. At first she laughed. She thought he was joking. And then she said, are you having an affair with my mum? Brian then said, for goodness sake, of course I'm not. I'm just reading his email here. He said, for goodness sake, of course I'm not. He goes on to say that he doesn't think she believed him, although she said, oh, OK, yeah, I believe you. He didn't think she believed him. He also says that she couldn't have thought much of him if she thought that he'd have an affair with her mum. So, yeah, I mean, you start getting into that. He thought, she thought, it gets too deep. But he says that he was worried because he felt that she thought he was lying and probably was having an affair with her mother. Now, that doesn't say much for her mother, actually thinking about it, does it? Brian doesn't say that. This is just my thoughts. Doesn't say much about her mother. If Tracy thinks that it might be true that she's having an affair with her boyfriend. So you're now wondering, how does this all end? Actually, that's what I was wondering when I was reading through this email from Brian earlier. I'll read on. Brian says that Tracy and him, they split up. It was too much and they split up. Tracy could never quite get her head round this rumour, whether it was true or false. She had said to Brian that her mother, as she put it, had been a bit of a goer. He says, I'm not sure what she meant by that, but in her younger years, a bit of a goer. I think it's pretty obvious what she meant by that, Brian. And they split up. Now, Brian didn't want this. He went round one evening to see Tracy, and Tracy was out. Her mother invited Brian in. Now, she didn't know anything about these rumours, and he said, have you heard anything? Do you know why we split up? And she said, no, Tracy hasn't told me. What happened? What was it all about? So he told her about the rumours that he'd had an affair with Tracy's mother, or was having an affair with her. Her mother laughed, and she said, oh, how silly. She said, why did you split up over that? He said, well, I don't think Tracy believed me when I said it wasn't true. And she laughed again. And then she put her arms round Brian, not to kiss him or anything like that, just to comfort him, because he was saying, I've lost Tracy now. I've lost her. All because of this stupid rumour. I wish I'd come to you in the first place. She put her arms round him and said, look, I'll talk to Tracy. At that minute, Tracy walked in, saw them arm in arm, or rather her mother's arms around Brian. She shrieked and ran upstairs, slammed her door shut, and that was it. I mean, I'm laughing, Brian. Sorry, I shouldn't laugh. But I'm just imagining that scene. You and her mother, arms sort of entwined, and then Tracy walks in after all these rumours, and that would have been it. That would have sealed it for her, wouldn't it? The rumours were true. He's having an affair with her mum. Brian doesn't mention Tracy's dad anywhere in the email, so presumably he never found out. But he does go on to say that they had a chat a few days later. Obviously, Tracy's mum had a word with her, explained everything, and Brian and Tracy got back together. And everything was fine. They went out with each other for 3 years. They finally got married. But all along, he said, Tracy's mum was giving me the eye. Whenever they went round there for Christmas or whatever reason, a barbecue, she always gave him the eye. And he said there was one Christmas Eve they were there. They'd had a few drinks on Christmas Eve. They were staying the night at Tracy's mum and dad's house. And the mother caught him in the kitchen and, as he put it, gave me the biggest snog ever and was groping me. And he ends it there. He says, I'm not saying any more. I'm just reading this. I'm not saying any more, but there's a lot more to it. I shall leave you in suspense. Oh, thank you, Brian. I was wondering what was going to happen after that big snog and groping. Brian, if you're listening, contact me. I have emailed you and you haven't answered. So contact me, because I'm sure I'm not the only one who's waiting to see what happened. Just thinking about it, Brian has planted the seed of doubt, hasn't he? Now, did he do the gentlemanly thing and shun his mother-in-law's advances and be faithful to Tracy, his wife? Or was he naughty? You've planted the seed of doubt, Brian. Is there time for one more seed of doubt? Yes, I'm sure there is. One more. Right, this final email, just a quick one from Derek. Hello, Derek. Derek was selling a car. I think this is back in the 60s. Yeah, that's right, here it is, the 60s. Selling a car, nice car, nothing wrong with it. Didn't want a lot of money for it, it was a fair price. Told his friends. One of his friends was interested. Came and had a look, kicked the tyres, looked round it, drove it round the block. I like that, he said. I like the price. I'm going to give that some thought overnight. I'll get back to you tomorrow. Following day, his friend didn't get back to him, so he rang him. What about a car? Yeah, change your mind. Yes, sorry to mess you about, don't want it. Didn't say why. That was that. OK, Derek thought, not to worry. Another chap was interested. In fact, a friend of a friend was interested. He came round, did the same thing, kicked the tyres. Oh, that's all right. Had a drive. I like this. I'm going to get some money together. I'll be back Friday with the cash. Didn't make an offer, didn't try and knock him down. Derek thought, great, this is it. I've sold the car. Friday, the chap came round. He said, look, I'm sorry to muck you about like this. I've changed my mind. Derek said, OK, not any reason. I just can't afford it. He said he was umming and ahhing. Oh, can't afford it. Various things to pay. Derek thought this all a bit suspicious. What's going on? When it happened the third time, someone else said that they liked it. They liked the car. They were going to come back and buy it. Brian was becoming really annoyed, and he actually confronted the chap. He said, I want to know what's going on, because this has happened 3 times now. This chap said, well, there's this rumour going around about your car. Sorry, mate, but, apparently it's got some major engine problems. Even though it runs and sounds all right, it's got some major problem. And Derek said, oh, OK, yeah, well, it hasn't. Where'd you get that from? He found out, he had to do a little bit of inquiring and quizzing people. He found out it was this other friend of his who desperately wanted the car, but wanted it at a knockdown price. He was hoping if he put enough people off, he could then go to Derek and say, I'll tell you what, I'll offer you whatever. And Derek would say, yep, it's yours. Well, thanks for telling us that little story, Derek. That's interesting. You apparently sold it in the end. Well done. Not to the chap that was putting the rumours around, planting the seeds of doubt in everyone's mind. Well, no, they weren't seeds of doubt, were they? They were just rumours, basically lies. So Derek eventually sold the car, and this mate of his that wanted it, he went and sorted him out. As he put it here, I sorted him out. I don't know what that means, Derek. I don't think I want to know. Thanks for listening, everyone. Email me if you've got any rude comments, suggestions, or otherwise. Raise Rants, that's all one word. Raise, RAYS, raise rants at protonmail.com. Raise rants at protonmail.com. I read all the emails. I'd love to hear from you. Take care. Thanks for listening. See you next Sunday. Bye-bye for now.